I want to deal tonight with a bit of a discussion on manna, maybe centered on the question, what did what brocha did the Jews make when they ate the manna in the desert? They actually, interestingly, are three views on that, which we'll come back to in a moment. And the reason we're talking about manna is because a good section of this week's parasha deals with the manna, the discontent of the Jews regarding the consumption of manna. And so we're going to find that there are actually three places in the Torah where there are descriptions about the manna, about the man. And by looking at the text, at least two of the places, we're going to get a bit of a better understanding of what that food was, what it was about, and that'll help explain the brocha as well. It would seem from the texts that the man is referred to as a lechem. If it's lechem, which is Hebrew for bread, of course, then the brocha would be hamotzi lechem in haaretz. That's the brocha we make for bread. Except, well, the manna didn't exactly come from the ground. Motzi lechem in haaretz means Hashem takes bread from the ground, brings out bread from the ground, and that doesn't really seem to fit over here. So we're going to get a look at some of the key texts, at least two of them. So there is a text in Shmot. There is a text, that's when initially they discover hunger after they've left Egypt, and now they're looking for food. We're going to look at a selection from this week's parasha, that is from Bamidbar. And then there is a third mention of the manna at the end of the 40 years, when the Jews kind of murmur again about the fact that they've been eating this manna. Let's look at the text, and in doing that, maybe get a bit of an understanding of what kind of food this was and what brocha would be appropriate. So this is from Shmot, and the Jews have just come out of Mitzrayim. There was no water. They were in a place called Mara. They were given wells, they were given miraculous water, and now they're hungry. And what do they say? And the timing of this happens, I don't know what date exactly, but this happened before they got to Sinai, to Mount Sinai. They left Mitzrayim on the 15th of Nisan. They crossed the sea on the 21st of Nisan. They're now somewhere between that, 21st of Nisan, and the Shavuot, which is the 6th of Sivan. So they're within that 7-week period, or at least the latter 6 days of that 7-week period. And they're complaining, they're murmuring. Where is the food? We remember, it seems, they're saying that we're sitting on flesh pots in Mitzrayim, a short memory. And we could eat bread to satiation, and now we're out there in the desert, there's no food, we're all going to die. And this is where they discover that they're going to receive manna. Hashem says to Moshe at this point, I'm going to make it rain for you bread from heaven. People will go out, they will gather what is needed for the day, and I can then test them whether they will follow my teaching. So what brocha are we going to make on this month? Well, we find that there are three opinions, as I said. There's the view that the brocha, because it's referred to, as you saw in the text, as a lechem min hashamayim, should be hamotzi lechem min haaretz. It's bread. Same brocha that applies to eating bread should apply here. There is another view that says, no, that's the wrong brocha. It doesn't apply. Where is the bread coming from? It's coming min hashamayim. If it's coming min hashamayim, then it should be hamotzi lechem min hashamayim. Lechem min hashamayim. There's yet another alternative, which is that not hamotzi, which is what you say when food comes out the ground, God makes it come out the ground, but here it's not that direction of coming up, it's coming down. So it would be coming down, raining down, and therefore there's an opinion that the brocha that was made was ani Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hamamatir, who makes it rain. That's for the word matar, which you may recognize in the second paragraph of Shema. Mamtir lachem lechem min hashamayim. So we say God makes it rain down bread from heaven. There is, interestingly, a third opinion that says no brocha at all was required when eating manna. Now, how do we explain that on such a sublime food, no blessing is required? Well, precisely because this food was so sublime, because it was heavenly, it does not require a brocha. You see, why do we make blessings on food? So the Gemara tells us, Hashem says, you may not benefit from anything in my world without kind of, paying the price. You go into the supermarket, you fill your trolley, and then before you can walk out and take things home, you get scanned and you pay. So we as humans are not allowed to benefit from anything in this world, which is God's world. Everything belongs to him. We may not benefit from anything in this world until we've kind of paid the price, which is a brocha, to acknowledge that God gave it to us as a gift. The Talmud, the Gemara, the brachot contrasts two verses. The one verse is La Hashem ha'aretz umloah, meaning to God is the entire world, all its contents. The other verse says, maybe we're more familiar with that one, that is in Hallel, Hashamayim, Shamayim LaHashem, Va'aretz natan livnei adam. We say heavens, gods, and the earth was given to humans. So the Talmud says, how do we reconcile it? What is it? Is it divine? Is it godly, or is it earthly? Is it humanly? And the answer is, well, depends whether you made a brocha or not. If you've acknowledged the gift of Hashem, then it is it's now yours until such time as you had made the brocha and acknowledged the divine origin of the food that you're about to eat, or any other pleasure you're going to have from this world. It's Hashem's, and it would be theft. But that applies only to benefiting from this world. The manna was not from this world. The manna is from out of this world. The manna is completely divine and heavenly. And because it doesn't come from this world, it doesn't require a brocha. Hashem makes it rain down, but it's not benefiting in any way from anything in this world, because it is absolutely, completely, and totally heavenly and divine. So the dictum, you may not benefit from anything in this physical world until you've recited the blessing, would not in this case apply. At a deeper level, the reason why we make blessings is because in doing so, we elevate divine sparks that have become trapped in this world. There's godliness in this world, but it's kind of concealed and hidden and trapped within physicality. And in order to make the divine reach its full potential, soar and get up there way on high, you need to recite the process of making a bracha, which is to kind of channel the energy in the correct manner. So you take the divine sparks that are trapped in the physical, and you release them by way of that bracha. It's called, in Kabbalistic terms, birur hanitzotzot, or the clarification, the cleansing, the polishing of the sparks. So that only applies to food where there is a mixture of kind of good and evil, where there is a level of temptation and of desire. None of that applies in any way to the manna, which is completely and totally a sublime divine food. It's referred to Tehillim, I think, as lechem abirim, divine, heavenly food from way up there. And there's no need in the case of food that is completely already pure and refined. The fact that every bit of the food, of the manna, was absorbed in the body, and there was no waste, there was no excrement, there was no elimination of anything beyond the manna that they ate. It was all pure divinity, nourishment, which was absorbed by body and soul. So no brocha at all. But looking back at that paragraph that we were reading earlier, there's another dimension of manna that comes out. And that's the fact that it came lechem. Where is it hiding? It came mina shamayim, came from heaven. And people had to go out and gather it. Underline that, because we'll come back to that a bit later when we contrast that with the way that's described in this week's parasha in Bamidbar. So they had to go out there, laktu, and they gathered vayom veyomu, that which was needed for the day, on the day. So you were only allowed to gather the correct amount that was needed for that particular day. Unbelievable act of faith. To put your hands in the hands of Hashem and to say, I will go there and I will just earn what I need to cover my expenses for today. And I'm not going to work for an extra moment. As soon as I've made enough money to be able to cover my expenses for today, I'll rely on faith. God will provide for me again tomorrow. Well, that's kind of how they lived. The expression is hand to mouth. Basically, they went out there, they gathered, and then they had it, and then they ate it, and then they had to go out and gather again the following day. And Hashem says, this is to test them, to see whether they will or will not follow my teachings. And this is what happened. Well, there was a quail, but we're not talking about the quails, that's a totally different story. And then in the morning, there was a layer of dew around the camp. And when the dew went up, so there is this precipitation of something fine, bare substance, as fine as frost on the ground. And the people look at it and they say, manhu, meaning, well, what is this? What is this? Manhu. Because they didn't know what it was. So they couldn't give, they couldn't call it by name. And man, as in, what is this? And Moshe said, well, this is the food that Hashem actually gave you to eat. So there, and I'm contrasting this again with what we're going to look at in the other text in a moment, it seems that the dew was on top of the manna, and when that raised, then there was a manna below the dew. Jews don't know what to make of this, and Moshe says to them, well, this is what Hashem has sent to you. And he said, go out there, measure up. It's 1 omer per person. So, depending on how many members of the family it is, you're going to come back with an omer each. He could have bring it back. And the Jews went there and they gathered, if they tried more or less, they ended up with the right amount. It didn't make a difference whether they hoarded huge amounts or they took less. They ended up with the correct, appropriate amount. And Moshe says to them, nothing for tomorrow. Don't hoard, don't keep it for the next day. And it seems that there were people who found that far too difficult, far too tempting, and tried, but that was really to no avail. So it would seem that the level of faith that was required over here was absolutely tremendous, and what they had to display is very big in terms of really putting their trust and their faith in Hashem completely. And this is what they did day after day. They went out there and they collected it, and they call it man. They call it man because it's like, we don't know what this is. Just like they expressed themselves, manhu, what is this? This was man. Man means a portion, means something which is designated, and that's the name that they gave it. And it describes it as coriander seed, white, and tasting like a wafer with honey. Actually, the Talmudic sources, the Midrashic sources tell us that manna could be made to taste like absolutely any food at all. If and depending, the righteous merited this, and the tzaddikim, they had the great merit, that the manna could taste like anything at all that they wanted. And the people who were less meritorious, well, no, it wasn't. It was kind of a single taste. It's also that besides the food that came with the manna, there was, for the tzaddik and for the righteous, there was gifts of jewels and precious stones and so forth that arrived together with the manna. So it's quite an overwhelming experience altogether. And because of this portion of the manna as described in the Torah becomes an expression of faith. And the people who have the custom, if you look in the newer editions of the Old Scroll Siddur, at the end of Shachris, there's actually addenda. And one of them is the Parashat Haman, the portion of the man, which all of us read to strengthen our faith that Hashem is the one who gives sustenance, Hashem is the one who provides for us. And reading that and reading about the Jews in the desert who live literally, as I said, from hand to mouth, and the entire trust in Hashem is a very powerful injection of belief in the way that Hashem sustains, all of us at all times. And coming back to the text, the section ends with an interesting instruction, and that is that Moshe is told, put some away for the future. And Moshe says to Aaron, take a jug and take an omer full of manna, put it there before Hashem. It's going to be preserved there for future generations. And that a jug of manna was kept and displayed in the Holy Temple. And when people had, doubts about where their sustenance would come from, this is what they looked at to remind them that at all times, in all generations, Hashem is the provider, and that helped people, put their faith in Hashem and worry less. We move on to the text that's found in this week's parsha. In this week's parsha, there's murmurings. And there's a group called the Asaf Sufu, the multitude. They kind of keep on cropping up, the mixed multitude, Erev Rav, a group of people who came along with the Jewish people from Mitzrayim, and they made trouble because they kind of, they express things that, as you can see over here, being echoed by the children of Israel. Who's going to feed us meat? No, we want meat. And this is this absolutely mind-blowing thing that they say. It's unbelievable. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt free of charge. Now, is it? Did they eat free of charge in Mitzrayim? Far from it. They were slaves. There was an unbelievable subjugation and commitment to get food. It wasn't, that there were free food stores and you could just go and collect fish. So what do they mean when they say, we remember that back in Egypt, we could eat fish for free? Says Rashi one line. Chinam was two words. Free, mina mitzvot. Free from the mitzvahs. Whereas today, in order to get sustenance from Hashem, there's a contract. There's a two-way street. We've got to fulfill our commitments to Hashem, which we're going to call the mitzvahs. Hashem is going to fulfill his covenant towards us, is going to look after it. If you listen to the commandments, they can brag out for Shema, and I will then give you. And one of the things is, in fact, the matar is rain and sustenance, yitzar, crops, oil, grain, and so forth. But that's im shamot tishmol mitzvot. If you listen to our mitzvot, to my mitzvot, says Hashem. In Egypt, there was no such requirement. Mitzvot hadn't been given yet. The contract wasn't enforced yet, and even the wicked could be given their sustenance because Hashem looks after everybody at the end of the day. But the closer you are to him, the more he wants a covenantal relationship, and that means mitzvot and tit for tat. Those for whom maybe he cares less are the ones that he kind of gives sustenance, and with that an expectation that there's going to be a reciprocation of service and a relationship with him. So the Jews are looking back and saying, before we entered into a covenantal relationship with Hashem, we were in Egypt. It was chinam, it was free. There was no expectation that we had to do anything on our part. Here we see so clearly that the righteous are getting a better deal than the wicked. That the closer you are to Hashem, the more relationship you have with Hashem, the better the manna tastes, the closer to your door it comes. The wicked had to go out there and collect it, but the righteous, we're going to see in a moment, just had to go out their front door. And there it was. The righteous are being rewarded with jewels, etc. It's clear that, even more so than in the world in which we live now, where there's complete freedom of choice, and we see the wicked prosper, we see the righteous suffer. But in the desert, it wasn't that way. The reward was immediate and obvious. When you had a relationship with God, you were blessed, and when you were, kind of more distant, well, you still got food, but it wasn't to the same extent. They're saying we long for the days when there was no commitment, and here we are going towards Mount Sinai, and we're going to enter into the covenant, capital C, and maybe you're making a mistake. Maybe we got to go back to Egypt, or at least we long for those days of Egypt where there wasn't that. And even more, surprising is the next comment they make, and they complain about specific foods. They complain about cucumbers, watermelons, leeks, onions, and garlic. Apparently, those are the things that the manna could not taste like. And whereas you were able to conjure up a taste for manna of all, any particular any food at all, those were foods that were excluded. So that the nursing woman doesn't agree with them, or with the baby, or whatever it is, I'm not sure. And therefore, this was the exception for vegetables, fire vegetables that could not be created through manna. And then, once again, it describes it, the manna, like coriander seed, its appearance like a crystal, and it says here it could be made to taste like or it had a taste like oil cake, which is similar to what is description in the previous text. But here you can see some differences here. The people walked about and gathered it. In the previous text, it seems that it was right there. They just had to go out and reach for it. Here, they've got to go about, and this is what I mentioned earlier, that those who merited it, well, the manna was right outside their front door. Those who did not merit it, well, they had to go out and walk about and gather it. They ground it, the mill crushed it in a mortar, cooked it in the pot. Well, not all of and made it into cakes. Not everybody. Those who merited it, well, the manna could taste like anything at all without any further preparation. If not, well, and this was the point I made earlier, they made earlier. We long for Egypt where things were free. And finally, it talks about the manna which descended on the camp at night, and the manna would descend upon it, which seems to contradict the earlier text that said that the dew covered the manna. And the only way to resolve these contradictory verses is actually, as the Talmud tells us, it was both. There was a layer of dew on the ground, and then there was a manna, and then it was covered in dew. And the manna was kind of held between the two layers and remained fresh in that way, which would resolve the contradiction between the verses in Bamidbar we've just read, the worst verses in Shemot we read a few moments ago. And for this reason, Shabbos table, where we always have two challahs, and that's remember we didn't read it in the text, that's in remembrance of the fact that on Fridays, in honor of Shabbos, so they didn't have to go out on Shabbos day and gather manna. They were given the double portion on Friday. So we always put two challahs on our table, and we cover them with dew, with a cloth. So we have the tablecloth. Below, we have the, and incidentally, one should cover a Shabbos table with a tablecloth. It should be covered. That's symbolic of the lower level of Jew. It's also honor of Shabbos that you put a white tablecloth on, and then you have the chalas, and then you have the cover above it, so that we have the dew below and the dew above. So we dealt with the before brocha. What about the after brocha? What brocha was made upon completing a manna meal? Well, interestingly, Gemara tells us the first paragraph of benching, the 4 paragraphs of benching, the first brocha, the first blessing of the Birkat HaMazon, of the grace after meals, was actually composed by Moshe in the desert for the Jews to recite in thanks for receiving the manna. And that's the bracha of Hazanat Ha'olam Kulo B'Tzuvo Hashem, who sustains everybody in His kindness, and bestows everything upon us. And that bracha was composed then in the desert for us to thank Hashem for the gift of manna. So we have the before bracha, and then we had a number of opinions, 3 possible blessings, and one opinion that says no blessing at all. We have the after bracha, which there the Talmud is clear, therefore there's no discussion among later commentators. It's, as the Gemara says, that first blessing that we are accustomed to, Hazaret HaKol, because we say it in our own grace after meals. Every time we read, that was a bracha that was recited by the children of Israel when they ate manna. Interestingly, if that blessing was composed for lechem min hashamayim, why is it that we actually say it for, we don't have lechem min hashamayim, we have lechem min haaretz, we have food from down here. So why is it that we recite that self-same bracha when we want to thank Hashem for our sustenance? Precisely because we have to acknowledge that even the food that we think we bought with a credit card, which we're going to pay for, with a hard-earned salary at the end of the month, which we went and bought in Pick and Pay, or in the kosher bakery, and brought home. It would seem that this is the toil, the result of our own efforts, even for bread that seems to have been achieved through our own hard work. We make that bracha hamotzi, Hazanet HaKol, the same bracha that they made in the desert, where it was clear and obvious that sustenance came from heaven. It's maybe less so for us, but when we thank Hashem in the first blessing of grace after meals, we use the same words that the children of Israel used in the desert to acknowledge and publicize the fact that we recognize that even the food we eat today is lechem min hashamayim, although it may have come from the ground, it is food that comes from heaven, that comes from Hashem up in heaven. Thank you very much. Keep dry and keep warm.